Hey team, I want to tell you about the importance of saving for your future, how you can do that effectively during the most tumultuous and unpredictable time in the past 40 years, and I want to share with you some of the tools that can help you do that. But first, do you mind if I share a personal story?
You guys, it's story time. We're gonna have story time. It's story time.
When I was 26 years old, I was fresh out of college and working for the hottest startup in the state where I lived. Now, I wasn't in the San Francisco Bay Area, I wasn't part of Y Combinator, but by startup standards, where I lived was pretty modest, and my salary was also modest, but I did have quite a bit of equity in a growing startup, and by all appearances, it was headed higher. What's more, I was house sitting for my parents who were living out of the country for a couple of years. So, no rent, single guy on a reasonable salary, and 6 figures in equity. And you know what? I was absolutely convinced that I was going to be rich very soon. Millionaire by 30, no problem. It'll practically happen in my sleep. The road is paved, the skids are greased. This is going to happen. Just as long as my startup gets acquired, boom, I'll be a rich man. Do you think that happened?
No.
No, you shouldn't, because it didn't happen. Flash forward a couple years, the startup had completely stopped making progress because of a logjam in leadership. I guess our startup stopped up? Is that a thing? The startup was stopped. The stop-up was started. The startup stopped. At a certain point, it became so clear to me that things were not working that I just had to leave. I walked away from a startup that I'd given years of my life to, despite my significant financial equity at that. So no more salary, and my parents were coming back, so no more free rent for me. And on top of all that, at the same time all of this was happening, my girlfriend dumped me. Cold, hard, done, it's over.
I can't hear you, that means we're not breaking up.
Yes,
we can't break.
So this was a low point, friends, a very low point in the life of your humble host, me, Austin M. Craig. And all of my undue confidence in that startup equity led me to believe I'd be rich without doing anything else. Through the remainder of my 20s, I didn't save anything. Not one red cent, not one blessed penny, nothing. I spent it on travel and eating at restaurants and clothes and the occasional absurd nonsense purchase. I owned a motorcycle for a while. I don't know why I had a motorcycle. A while later, years later, I met my now wife. We got married, and I didn't have a salary that was any higher than it had been several years before. My equity was worth a laughable fraction of what it had been at its peak, and I had credit card debt and back taxes owed. So, when I got married, what I brought to the table financially was debt, was dumb, unnecessary consumer debt. So why am I sharing this with you? Because I want you to learn from my mistakes. I want you to save for the future, for a rainy day. And further, I want to tell you what I think is the best savings method there is. The one, the only. That's right, friends, I'm talking about saving in Bitcoin. So why save in Bitcoin? Well, what if I told you that even if you were responsible and you'd been putting away your money, those savings are melting away, disappearing like tears in rain.
Like tears in rain.
Well, that's not hard to imagine because it's our current reality, and anybody with their eyes open can see that. Banks, the tried and true way to save, offer interest rates on your deposit that don't even pretend to keep up with inflation. Last year, YouTuber and prolific saver Graham Stephan said he was going to stop saving altogether, and he was right to do so. That's absolutely the case for saving money in a bank account, which at best can pay 0.5% annually. That's a joke. It's an unfunny joke. It doesn't even keep up with the Fed's target inflation rate of 2%. And you know what? CDs and bonds barely do any better. And honestly, if you're inclined to save your money in a traditional bank account, a CD or a bond, you wouldn't be watching my channel. So you'll know that if you see my other videos. So those are off the table, so far as I'm concerned. What about real estate? Or a real estate investment trust? Listen. Real estate is a perfectly legitimate investment and a means of preserving value. This is debatable, but it's widely believed that owning a home is the most sure way to financial independence. It's the American dream, after all. True story, when I left that startup and I was flat broke, my dad was trying to convince me to buy a house. Because there was a time when anybody, even an unemployed startup guy with no savings, could get a mortgage. I did not take him up on that advice because even then, it sounded crazy to me. However, I have been a homeowner for a few years now. My real estate has appreciated in value, and I'm very grateful for that. But homeownership isn't synonymous with savings. For one, your equity is totally tied up. My wife and I just refinanced our house thanks to low interest rates. But man, in the midst of that process, you start to ask yourself if it's really worth it. Paperwork upon paperwork, detail upon financial detail. At one point, the mortgage lender demanded a letter from my wife's boss asking why she'd recently gotten a significant raise. She got a raise because she's awesome at her job, that's why. You need that in writing or notarized? This is bonkers, and even our mortgage lender knew that. You can own real estate, and that real estate can increase in value, but don't expect to have easy access to that value. Plus, and this is still my least favorite part of home ownership, owning a home entails a ton of work and maintenance. Trust me, we did a complete remodel in our first home, and we're talking about doing another complete remodel, total gut job, in our current home. Home ownership is a part-time job, man, and it's never done. There will always be the water heater that needs to be replaced, and the fence that's falling apart, and the paint that needs repainting. This is not passive savings. A real estate investment trust might be a better option, certainly less labor, but still, this isn't really considered a conventional means of savings. What else you got? Stocks? Stocks are becoming more erratic than they've ever been in our lifetime. Stocks performed irrationally well in 2020 and through the pandemic, but in the past 6 months, everything is down. The S&P, the NASDAQ, the Dow, and there is good reason to believe we may be looking down the barrel of a serious recession or even a depression in the not distant future. And why are we seeing that erratic movement? It's the same reason nobody wants to hold cash in a savings account. Inflation, my friends, the giant red polka-dotted elephant in the room that those in power really don't want us to look at or talk about. Like, Mr. President, sir, are you really saying that inflation is Vladimir Putin's fault and COVID's fault? You don't suppose it has anything to do with, say, the unprecedented increase in the money supply? Really? Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin, knew this and drew direct attention to it. Quote, "The root problem with conventional currency is all the trust that's required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency, but the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust." Listen, dear viewer, I'm just going to give it to you straight. People in power have very strong incentive to lie to you.
Will you pledge never to lie to us from that podium?
I will never lie to you. You have my word on that.
So that was a lie.
And sometimes they do it for so long that I'm not sure they realize they're doing it anymore. It's just muscle memory, open mouth, say words. It doesn't have to reflect reality at all, just part of the political game, you see. And that is why you should be saving in Bitcoin. Because you shouldn't have to trust those in power that they'll have your best interest in mind. They don't. They can't. And you should be able to provide for your future despite their bad behavior. I already mentioned that when I got married years ago, I brought a bunch of debt to the relationship. But there is one other thing I brought with me. I'd been hearing about this Bitcoin thing for a couple years. It was intriguing at first, and then it was captivating after a while. If the government was an immovable object, then Bitcoin sure appeared to be an unstoppable force.
You just couldn't let me go, could you? This is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
I've also mentioned before that when my wife and I got married, we lived using nothing but Bitcoin for all expenses for 3 months, for gas, rent, groceries, insurance, travel, entertainment, and we documented the whole journey in a film called Life on Bitcoin. Links to that film below in the description. And if living on Bitcoin alone in 2013 sounds crazy, then do me a favor and click that like button on this video and subscribe and hit the bell icon to continue to get a decade's worth of hard-won wisdom from my Bitcoin and crypto journey. What you might not fully appreciate from the film is how much time we had to spend educating people about Bitcoin. Because this was 2013 and most people hadn't heard of Bitcoin by that point. And if they didn't know what it was, they couldn't accept it as payment. So, being the media professionals we were, my wife and I put together a pamphlet to hand out to merchants that we met to help convince them to accept Bitcoin. I've still got some. I've got one right here. Right here. This one. And this pamphlet, it explains Bitcoin. It talks about how they can transact. It gives a few quotes. And there's a quote in here from a man who is much more famous today than he was back then, Tyler Winklevoss. He said, "We have elected to put our money and faith in a mathematical framework that is free of politics and human error." It was a good pamphlet. That's a powerful proposition. And yes, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency are definitely in the crosshairs of politicians and regulators today. But even Bitcoin's greatest political enemies, all they can do is try to dissuade people from using Bitcoin. Because they can't do anything to actually hurt the protocol, because Bitcoin has been so perfectly designed as sound money, with the right qualities of money. More and more people will find it, just as they have over the past decade. Saifedean Ammous, the author of the Bitcoin Standard, had this to say on the subject. History shows it is not possible to insulate yourself from the consequences of others holding money that is harder than yours. There's a reason Bitcoin was the most profitable asset of the 2010s. It's better money than anything else out there. It's finite, it's fungible, it's durable, it's divisible, it's more than portable, it's money that teleports across space and time. And more than anything else ever devised by humankind, Bitcoin is property that cannot be confiscated.
I can hold possession of $1 billion of Bitcoin in my head, just holding a password or a set of private keys. That's a pretty big idea.
So, how should you save in Bitcoin? There are a few simple tools. I will offer 3 in this video. First, you should buy Bitcoin regularly. Don't be like I was in my 20s. Save a portion of every paycheck. Pay your future self so someday you're not a wage slave anymore. Sure, you can YOLO in with everything you have all at once right now, but the more common way is to dollar cost average. That just means that you buy a certain amount of Bitcoin periodically, whether that's $10 a week or $100 a month, whatever your budget can afford. The best place I've found for this is Swan Bitcoin. It's easy, it's secure, and the fee structure is as good or better than any of the other sites I've found. Find my link for Swan Bitcoin down below in the description. Now, as great as Swan is, you don't really want to keep your coin on a third-party service for very long. If you listened to Michael Saylor earlier, you'll remember that one of the most groundbreaking qualities of Bitcoin is full self-custody, which nothing else on Earth compares to. And the most secure way to custody your Bitcoin is with a hardware wallet. This is a device that stores your private keys, the all-important access code to your Bitcoin wallet. The hardware wallet that I've enjoyed the most is from a company called Ledger. I've used the old one, the Ledger Nano S, but the product line has been updated in recent years with the Ledger Nano X, which frankly looks a lot better. It'll run you about $150, but if you're holding any meaningful amount of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies or NFTs, you should really have one of these. It's just the smartest way to store your coin that you can fully control yourself. You can buy one through the Amazon link, again down below in the description. And the third thing we'll share with you is something you might have heard of through some other YouTubers. I'm talking about I Trust Capital. This is a service to let you invest in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies with your tax-advantaged IRA retirement account in the United States. This is smart because your retirement savings are already funds that you won't be touching for a long time to come. As the dollar continues to melt, this is a no-brainer. Plus, iTrust has sponsored a number of different Bitcoin and crypto YouTubers so far, but not this one. So if you go sign up at the link below, tell them that I sent you. There it is, team. Bitcoin is a better savings account, and that's more and more clear every day as conventional institutions continue to become more stretched and twisted and fiat money struggles. But did I leave something out? Is there a different crypto that will outlast Bitcoin? There isn't. This is the clear winner. Regardless, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and we will talk about it all in a future video. Thanks, team.